who will be sharing the latest insights from their National Student Survey. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about the findings. So please join me in welcoming Bethany, and it's over to you, Bethany.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to our Cibyl Student Insight research piece for this edition of the Lunch and Learn session. So just to give a brief overview of who I am and what my company Cibyl does. My name's Bethany, I'm the Fieldwork Manager at Cibyl, a part of Group GTI, and we are a leading student market research consultancy in the UK and Ireland. And the premise of our research is to support employers, universities and professional bodies and researchers with things such as attraction, brand, selection, assessment, onboarding and so on and so forth. And today I hope the research that I share and the research that I have shared helps you a bit with career service planning. So annually we deliver large scale national representative projects looking at subject specific matters of importance to students. So our research really does cover the full student journey. We've got school leaver research, we've got research that looks at the state of student mental health in the UK and Ireland, and we've got the levelling the playing field research in law. So that's looking at access to the legal profession. But today I'm going to be focusing on our graduate research. So in 2025, our graduate research in Ireland got close to 15,000 responses from 45 universities across Ireland. So it's an online questionnaire that's conducted annually at the same time, so from September to January. So that is that first term and a few weeks into the second term. And through partnering with University Career Services, our own siblings panel promoting the graduate research on the Grad Island platform, and also third-party promotion and panels, we were able to achieve such a high sample. So our partnership model is that we ask University Career Services to share the survey with their students, and as a thank you, we will once we have collected our student responses, we will send a bespoke research report to University Career Services, so they have a benchmark of them versus a national average. So earlier this year, I think in early May, I did send over the Irish reports to you all. So I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to look at them, but I think it's a nice way to kind of talk and recap everything that's going on in Ireland and what's happening for the student market. So when I was going through and doing this report, I really wanted to find a quote that kind of encompasses what students are going through today. And I found this really good one. So from a final year business and management student, one of their what they told us was finding a good job for a fresh graduate is a tough task unless they're more than excellent in today's AI world. And I think this comment really encompasses how a lot of students feel, but also how adults are feeling in today's job market. So the job market's becoming increasingly harder. There's a lot of pressure, especially in this AI world, to be the perfect candidate, hit a lot of points, and also students are wondering how they can compete in a world where AI usage is becoming increasingly common. So that goes on to my graduate market update and how students are thinking and feeling about careers. So unsurprisingly this year, a lot more students are saying that it will be tough to get a graduate job. So last year was around 55% and now it's 60% in 2025. So 3 in 5 think it'll be tough to get a graduate job after graduation. It's an 18% increase since 2023. So there's a lot of anxiety about getting graduate jobs after university. And I think it's a lot to do with students' expectations and what they're willing to pursue. So if we look at now versus 2023, a lot more students are pursuing or going into work as opposed to, for example, pursuing a postgraduate degree. So entering employment is increasingly becoming the preferred post-university choice. Maybe a lot of students notice this. There's a lot of competitive, they see how competitive the current graduate market is. So knowing that they're going into work, they understand it's going to be a bit tougher than it was in previous years, where they may have had less competition due to a portion of students pursuing postgraduate degrees. But also it could be due to salary expectations. So salary expectations, particularly in the last 4 years, have become are consistently getting higher. So last year it was closer to 42k. This year it's closer to 43.5k. So students have a much higher salary expectation, and it's actually translated into how students search for roles. So a lot of students don't apply to roles which have salary ranges missing because they don't want to waste their time. They want to see the salary that they want to pursue after graduation and will go into that avenue. And salary does change by different demographics. So for the national average, it's around 43.5k. It's a bit lower for female students than comparison when compared to male students. We can see in different areas, for example, first year students have much higher salary expectations. Then maybe they have a bit more awareness of the graduate market, understand what's out there, and their salary expectations dip slightly. In some cases, for example, those with a mental health condition or those who have self-identified as LGBTQ+, and those from a lower socioeconomic background are likely to have a lower expectations than their counterparts. But despite having this expectation, what are graduates actually earning? So this year we did a split between, I think we introduced this last year, sorry, we had a split between students and graduates, so we can look at what students want versus what graduates are actually receiving. So you can see that there's that expectation for around 34% of your the national average to achieve above 40k. But according to the graduate outcome survey, most graduates only earn up to 40k. And in terms of the Cibyl survey, a lot of graduates, 33%, the most common salary is between 30 to 35. So there's a big disparity between what graduates are actually earning and what students want to receive after university. It also could relate to different factors, for example, location. So when asking students what their relocation preferences were, it's very consistent with a lot of students saying that they are open, they're very mobile and would move anywhere in Ireland. But this year, interestingly, there's been an increase in a lot of students wanting to stay within their home region. And then when we look at this split by different regions, although Dublin is the most popular place to work, unsurprisingly, its popularity has decreased this year since 2023. So it's around 55% then, it's now 49%. So students are prioritising staying within their home region, but those who are branching out, their ideal location is to move to Dublin because that is where the most graduate hires are. But we did ask this year, what would be the reason for graduates to accept an offer outside of their preferred location? For a lot of students, it's whether the salary is higher than similar roles in favourable location, if it has a good work-life balance. But interestingly, if we're looking at students who just want to relocate to Dublin, moving outside of Dublin would be dependent on if there are better career progression opportunities. So students are very job focused, but they are very mobile as well and will make certain sacrifices if they are to land their dream job role. Then when we're looking at employer preferences, looking at sector aspirational preferences, interestingly, this year, tech has become a lot more popular than science or the public service, which are traditionally very stable sectors. On the lower end, fewer students, but it's been consistent since last year, are interested in law, insurance and consulting. So technology is becoming increasingly attractive to students, as well as if we look at what roles students want to go into, regardless of what sectors they're interested in. Students are very interested in either tech roles, health and social care roles are very popular, as well as engineering, but technology seems to be the hot topic and is trending. And we can kind of deduce it's because a lot of students have much higher salary expectations. Tech is an industry that pays pretty well, so a lot of students are moving to where they feel the higher salaries are. But another new question for 2025, we did ask students if they feel their career options are determined by their social background. And it's interesting because this directly influences the different industries students feel they will go into after university. So 41%, 2 in 5, said that their social background does influence their career options, but we can see there's a increase in certain areas. For example, Asian and Black heritage students are more likely to feel this way than white students. Those students with self-identified disabilities, for example, a mental health condition, or if they're neurodiverse, are more likely to feel this way as well. And I think it's interesting when we look at this by sector as well. So looking at just those students who agree with the statement, there are people in the sector I want to work in, people like me in the sector I want to work in, and those who agree, solely isolating those with self-identified disabilities because they're more likely to feel like their social background influences things. We can see a lot of students with self-identified disabilities feel that they're represented within online retail, FMCG and science. But on the lower end, there are fewer students who feel like they're represented in insurance, in consulting, in banking, in logistics. And it maps directly to what they're interested in. So we can see a lot of students with self-identified disabilities do register a higher level of interest in tech, in science, in online retail, but fewer students are registering interest in banking and logistics. So if students don't feel like their sector is representative of them, they will actively not apply. And it is because a lot of these students do feel their social background is a direct influence of how they can get access into these industries. Then onto the recruitment process. So looking at the student journey for first years, middle years, finalists and graduates. So a lot of first year students, 47% at this stage that we're surveying them, so that's that first term and a few weeks into the second term, haven't really started thinking about their graduate careers. And when they have started thinking about their graduate careers, it's really them researching professions or employers. And it's a similar case for middle year students as well. Although those within their penultimate years, and that is those students who aren't in their first year and aren't in their final year, are more likely to be applying to internships and vacation schemes, but 34% still haven't figured it out. But very positively, around 15% of students in their final year haven't started. So it does consistently go down. And final year is when students really start to kick into gear and start thinking about their graduate career prospects. But still, a lot of students are in that researching employers and profession stage, and only 31% are actually in that application and assessment stages. It's really graduates who at that stage are, although they started thinking about their careers, which we'd hope so now that they've officially graduated, a lot of them at this stage are still applying or at assessment stages and not really have had an offer yet. So it just goes to show how it goes down the line, and career thinking isn't really a priority in first year and even in students' penultimate years, and it only kicks into gear in their final year. And then when they're graduating, they're still at that application assessment stage and they don't have that offer yet. So students tend to delay that graduate career thinking until their final year, or even when they've recently graduated. So when they are in this assessment stage, what do they prefer, what do they dislike, and what causes them to drop out? And I think it's quite interesting to see it in this view, because I think this is the perception of what they like and what they dislike. I mean, nobody really likes going through the interview process, but there are things that students prefer versus things that they actively don't want to do. So for example, students really do like in-person interviews, they like live video interviews, but when we see on the lower end, and very few students actually like recorded video interviews, and 48% said that it would they actively dislike it, and 8% would even drop out of the process if they had to do one. But it's interesting because when we look at what students have actually done and been through, a lot of students have participated in an in-person interview before, with things such as Teams and Zoom. Now that we have to kind of communicate via video chat, students really did dislike live video interviews in previous years, particularly pre-pandemic, but they like them now because they have more experience with them. And we tend to see very few students have physically had an experience with a recorded video interview, but because they actively dislike it, or they think the process of even doing it is quite jarring, or they've even had a friend that's had a bad experience, or they've heard bad experiences via social media and other platforms, they actively dislike it just based on perception and not actual experience. And we tend to see that the more experience students have with things, for example, with live video interviews, the more that they like it. And we can see this with how things change year on year. So we can see in 2023 for virtual interviews, a lot of students really did dislike recorded video interviews, and it would cause 15% to drop out. But we can see the trend of it's actively becoming a bit more liked, and we think it's because more students are having experience doing recorded video interviews. They're becoming comfortable with them. So although it's not the most liked video assessment method, it is becoming increasingly more like with the more experienced students have. As well as with live video interviews, I remember pre-pandemic where a lot of students actively disliked live video interviews, but they're increasingly becoming popular, particularly because in many cases, as I mentioned, the first step and the first stage of interview will be a live video interview with an employer. So students have had to have more experience with it. So they've become a lot more comfortable with this assessment method. So we did ask students that 8% who said they would drop out of a recorded video interview. We asked them why, and the feedback is it's very unnecessary and pointless. They don't like the fact that they can't get feedback. It's impersonal. It makes them feel uncomfortable, and there's that comment of things are far more pressure when it's virtual. It's awkward, it's fake. A student even said that they feel like they're being judged by AI. And there's this common theme of anxiety. So not being able to bounce off people's interactions, not being able to see if an answer's landed well or if an answer's landed not so well, and trying to recover from that. A lot of students really don't like that element of recorded video interviews. But again, this is based on perception. A lot of students' perception of recorded video interviews is a lot worse than them physically having to do it. And a lot of students have said that once they've done a recorded video interview more than once, they started to feel a lot more confident with them, as opposed to those who haven't had many or limited experience with it. So we did ask students if they've ever dropped out of an assessment process out of their own volition, and 21% said that they had. And I think it's quite interesting to see this split between different demographics as well. For example, Black and students versus Asian students are more likely to have dropped. Black heritage students are more likely to have dropped out of the assessment process versus Asian students, who are the least likely cohort to have dropped out of an assessment process. And it could be due to that academic pressure, or having to perform, or just going through things generally. And then when we're looking at those with a mental health condition or those who are neurodiverse, they're much more likely to have dropped out of the assessment process versus the national average. And then when we're asking them why, with particularly those with a mental health challenge, or those with self-identified disabilities, I should say, a lot of students think it's discriminatory. There's a disdain for those who are different. Things can take too long, and then there is the student that's mentioning again it's impersonal and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And we did ask a question this year about students' awareness of having that extra time to complete an assessment, or having that access to different things due to them having a self-identified disability or special circumstances. And a lot of students actually aren't aware that these things can be mentioned in the initial process, so adjustments can be made. But those who have had adjustments still do really dislike the process and have even dropped out with the adjustments. So there's that disparity between students having awareness, but also employers making the right adjustments for those students and their relative needs. On to everyone's favourite topic of 2025, AI usage and the usage of AI tools. So this year, we found a lot more students are becoming comfortable with AI usage and what they're using AI for. So students are more likely this year to use AI for CV tips, drafting a cover letter, drafting emails and research, which brings me nicely to this point of students' responses to AI in the recruitment process. So we define students in 3 different categories. There's the aversion categories, so those who have low to no usage of AI, they avoid using AI out of fear and principle. The enablement category, so those who embrace AI but avoid using it to replace their own work up to the point of evaluation. And the reliance category, so those who are comfortable with using AI to replace their own work up to the point of assessment. That's up to and including interviews as well. And I think it's interesting to see that split between first year students and final year students, because it's first year students within Ireland who are really hesitant to use AI. And then it's final year students who really are more comfortable using it for the application process and using it researching employers. But very few students, both in first and final year, are at that reliance stage, which I think is quite positive. So I know, final year students, they're more likely to be applying, they're more likely to have time constraints, particularly with final exams or final coursework or dissertations coming up. So they're more likely to be in that enablement category to speed up the process. They probably are applying at a higher rate when compared to first year students. And also first year students at that level may not have an awareness of how AI can help them within the assessment their recruitment process. But I think what's very positive is that very few students are at that reliant stage, so they aren't very comfortable using it to replace their work up to the point of assessment, including interviews, because they probably have had very strict guidelines at university. They may have had a bad experience with using AI. They may have got a bad grade for using AI in coursework and so on and so forth. So there is still a hesitance to use AI up to a certain point. And where students are most likely to use AI, it's really with speeding up the process, not replacing their own work, which is super positive. And I wonder how that will change as years go on. So when looking at careers service supports, and whether students have engaged with any of the careers activities whilst at university. Typically we see, but more so within the coming years, that international students are much more likely to make use of the career service than domestic students. So international students are much more likely to have attended careers events. They're more likely to have browsed for it and applied for opportunities, and they're also more likely to have access help or navigating their career journey. So whether that's be attending an appointment, CV reviews or practice interviews, and they're also more likely to take advantage of the skills development and career initiatives that are at university. And I think it makes sense because a lot of international students have more invested in university, so they're more likely to make use of services. We see this within our mental health survey and the career support survey as well. Also, international students, particularly if they plan to stay in Ireland, probably need more help navigating the career market, particularly now with visa changes. So they'll be a lot more reliant on the career service to help them navigate their careers. So when asking those who haven't accessed the career service why they haven't accessed the career service, the reasons do change by different year groups. For example, first years and penultimate years seem to think that it's too early in their studies to engage with the career service, whereas final years are more likely to say that they're too busy, that they're not aware of services, or that they're unsure what to do in the future. And unsurprisingly, as students enter their final year, they're increasingly more likely to feel anxious about their career prospects, and it acts as a barrier when engaging with the career service. But I think it's that age-old problem of how to communicate to students that it's never too early to start thinking about your next steps and starting to get a plan in place of what you want to do after university, even if it's just exploring options or attending events. it's never too early for a first year to start thinking about their career, because once they get into their penultimate years or they get into that final year, they realize it's too late. And then it kind of relates back to the earlier slide where a lot of final year students are at the stage where they're only just starting to research employers and opportunities when they should be really at that application stage. So having that communication that it's never too early to engage with the career service is key. But then looking on the flip side, those who have engaged with the career service, we ask them how satisfied they are. And we can see, you know, throughout the pandemic, satisfaction did decline quite a bit. And that was influenced by a lot of things being online and students not liking a lot of things being very impersonal, adjusting to life in lockdown. And then in 2022, satisfaction did increase because a lot more things were in person and gradually becoming a bit better. In 2023, satisfaction did decline as we had that transition from those who weren't in that COVID cohort transition out, and those who were, they had different expectations for the career service, and dissatisfaction actually increased in 2023 due to lack of in-person events. And then it skyrocketed back being higher than the pandemic levels, and it did decline slightly this year, and what we're theorizing, but it hasn't declined as much as it did in 2023 or even in 2021. And what our theory is because the graduate market is so tough at the current moment that a lot of students are leaning towards the career service for opportunities and for career guidance. And just because, and it's nothing that the career service is doing, it's just the graduate market isn't the best. So students are expressing dissatisfaction, particularly with access to opportunities, just because they aren't seeing their opportunities that they want. But that's because the job opportunities that they want, there aren't many of them, or as many as there were in previous years. When we're looking at career service satisfaction by year group and subject, it's interesting. So first year students are the most satisfied cohort. Satisfaction does dip down within penultimate years, and then final years it does go up a bit. But it's really that first year students who are very satisfied with that interaction. But again, it's due to opportunities. So middle years and final students are more likely to be researching employers and their options. They aren't seeing as many options as they want, so satisfaction does go down. But I think it's really interesting in seeing satisfaction by different subjects. So we can see business and management students, law students, medicine, STEM students have similar satisfaction levels to average, but we look on the lower end, which is the humanities and social sciences and arts and design students, they're least likely to be satisfied with the career service. And again, it all relates back to opportunities, because humanities and social sciences are quite broad, as well as arts and design being quite niche. Those roles that students want aren't particularly out there thick and fast as they would like, so satisfaction does decline in certain areas. But where areas are a bit more stable, such as, you know, medicine, law, business and management, satisfaction is a lot higher, because I think it's easier to cater to these student cohorts as well. And then when we're looking at how students feel about these different services, students are very satisfied with things such as appointments, with careers fairs, with emails. But when we look at on the lower end, again, it's related to those opportunities. So the range of career opportunities, there are a cohort of students, over 1 in 4, who are saying they're dissatisfied with opportunities specific to their interests. There are a cohort of students who are more likely to select neutral with things such as the information they're being provided with, and also the careers content on social media. But we did ask students an open text feedback, and I've collated a word cloud on how they would describe the career service, or what they turn to the career service for, or what they're looking for. And it's mainly opportunities, jobs, companies, employers. That's what students are associating with you with. You can see company, industry, jobs, internships. It's really what students are looking to access. we can see that students still are looking at, advice, experience, workshops, help. But this is what students are looking at. Opportunities was, I think the word opportunities came up over 400 times within those open text feedback. So it is what students are solely focusing on. And finally, to round up on communication and engagement. So looking at career activity preferences, so this is what students would want to access, mainly in person. A lot of students really do like careers fairs, career skills workshops, and insight and open days, but it differs between undergraduate students and postgraduate students. While they're equally interested in career skills workshops, careers fairs, insight and open days, are much more attractive to undergraduate students. And then unsurprisingly, one-to-one careers advice meetings and also joint research joint research with departments are much more attractive to postgraduate students. And it kind of signals where students are at in their career journeys, I should say. So undergraduate students are more likely to be in that exploring phase. They're still researching, so they want to, hear more about employers and what they do and understand it a bit better, whereas postgraduate students are more likely to know what they want to do, so they want more tailored advice, more experience. If they're doing a research masters, joint research with having an employer do joint research with a department is very, very interesting to them, just because they're more likely to be secure in what they want to do after graduation. I think this is a really interesting slide, because when we're looking at digital engagement platforms, and I think we get it a lot with different employers and career services, a lot of people are like, oh, we should do more on social media. What should we do on social media? Emails, students don't like emails, students receive too many emails. But when we are actually asking these students, how would you like to engage with career information on different platforms? What's your most preferred digital platform? Consistently, and interest has even grown in 2025. A lot of students really do value emails. Now, they may complain that they get too many, but emails are the most effective form of digital communication. And then when we look on the lower end, fewer students are using career and employer websites this year, but they're still very popular. And although popularity of social media has grown slightly, it hasn't overtaken emails. Even this year, the gap has actually gotten wider between social media and emails. So if you are being pressured to do more on social media or have more social media content, you can show this slide and say students actually do prefer emails. But those 55% who want to use social media platforms, we ask them what platforms they're most likely to use. And I think it's quite interesting looking at that split between school leavers and mature students, because although 41% of students would like to engage with employers on social media, different student groups use different platforms. For example, mature students are more likely to be engaged solely on LinkedIn and not really be interested in different platforms. And for school leavers, so I should say we define school leavers as those aged 18 to 24, and mature students as those aged 25 plus. School leavers, although they're heavily engaged with LinkedIn, they're also open to using other platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. So Instagram and TikTok have become increasingly popular in 2025. And for the first time, TikTok has actually overtaken the popularity of Facebook. So when we're asking students, what are you using these platforms for? And what are you most interested in when accessing these platforms? It's mainly to access those day in the life videos. So students aren't actively looking for vacancies in jobs on Instagram and TikTok, but what they are very interested in is having behind the scene access of an employer that they would like to work for, an industry that they would like to work in, seeing graduates or even seeing senior leadership and what they do day to day and what the industry entails is very interesting to these student cohorts, and that's what they're using Instagram and TikTok for. They aren't, as I mentioned, using Instagram and TikTok to search for jobs or look for open vacancies. So I think the key takeaways from today's research topic are students are very job focused, but they are willing to sacrifice. It's kind of been driven by a very tough graduate market. They are going into work, but their salary expectations are stabilizing. They're more likely to look for roles in their home region. They're making a lot of sacrifices, and it's because the graduate market is so hard. Tech is trending. It's attracting a lot of students, both in the industry, but also students pursuing tech roles. And we can deduce it's mainly because of that high starting salary. And again, because it's driven by that tough graduate market, the cost of living crisis, a lot of students would gravitate towards tech because they think it will alleviate that pressure. A lot of students are still exploring their career plans. Finally, students are still researching employers at that stage. So despite a lot of students being anxious about their graduate career prospects, a lot of students aren't taking the necessary steps or earlier intervention about their career plans, and they're still in the exploring stage. Students are very cautious about AI, so they are using it to kind of speed up the process to help them write their CV or help them research employers, but they aren't using it to replace their own work. So they're not using it with online tests or with live video interviews, or very few students, I should say, are using it within that stage. Students still prefer email and in-person events. So despite the social media growth, emails and careers fairs still matter to students, particularly those students who are aged 18 to 24. And a lot of students are focused on opportunities. So they are turning to the career service a lot more for access to jobs. But I think the key point of the research piece, and I think the theme is that more students are kind of leaning towards more support for the career service, and the support the students receive from the career service is what matters most. So the comments increasingly are becoming a bit more positive about the career service in terms of what you provide, in terms of you just being a friendly face, the resources you offer, helping to navigate through the market, just being kind or helping a student get a part-time job is really valuable. And a lot of students do mention and note the value of the work that you do. So that is all for me, a quick whistle-stop tour of the research. But if you were interested in more research and wanted to partner with us, we could provide research tailored to your student cohort if we haven't already, so we can understand what makes you unique and similar to the national average, understanding that employability and where entrepreneurial support is needed, student career service awareness and barriers to use, understanding engagement activity preferences, verbatim and feedback comments. So the lovely comments that I just showed, I could give that to you directly for your student service, to discover what channels your students are using to engage with the employers, and also help position your student talents. With the research that we hold, as it's quite big, we can we can analyze different targeted profile. So we can look at different student subjects, we can look at different year groups, we can look at domicile, gender, ethnicity, region, and whatever you wanted. So yeah, that is all from me this afternoon. Are there any questions about the research or what I've just shared just now?
Bethany, thanks very much. An excellent presentation there, and lots for us to think of. I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, but maybe some people might want to put on their mic and ask a question, or to write a question. But yeah, it's very interesting. Every year when we get the report, I suppose always comes to mind how students describe the career services, for all of us, and again why they don't use the career service is always an interesting one, and it's interesting also the digital engagement, how they see, we again would survey our students and ask how best to communicate with them. They would say email, And then when you ask them, they'll say, oh, we get too many emails.
Yeah.
Or when we survey our students, actually what they say to us as well, tell the academics, because they're in front of us every day and they can remind us. But yes, some very good key takeaways there for us as well. And it's interesting, the email and the in-person events are very high. So again, you know, it's really interesting to see the overview, Bethany, that kind of popped into the chat there. Just wondering, has anybody any other questions?
I think Ema has her hand up.
Oh yeah, Emer, do you want to ask a question there?
Just sort of more a comment. So thank you for inviting us into this. It was really useful and helpful. And it's interesting, just echoing as well what Angela says about sometimes what students ask for, and then there is the challenge of getting them to open the emails. And again, like sometimes whenever we've done it with looked at feedback with particular target groups, like for instance our international students, some of them can be quite vocal about, you know, and we weren't told about this, we weren't told, and you're able to say, look, this email went out. And one thing that we found useful was having a third party in those sort of things, that to say, you know, it is your responsibility as a student to open the email, and the career service, they can do so much. They can't actually get you the job, they can help you toward it, but it is one key responsibility as a student is opening those emails. Now, whether or not this, but at least it's cathartic to the rest of us to hear somebody else saying, if the service sends you an email, please open it.
Yeah. Thanks, Emer.
Sorry for jumping in there without putting my hand up first. This is Orla here. Hi, Angela. Hi, Bethany. That was wonderful, really, just to get a verbal overview of it. So it's great. One of the things I'd say about the digital engagement is that I think, emails definitely works here, but they don't open them, same as everywhere else. But I think the social media aspect to it is where it can support the email. So in other words, say I would have had a webinar yesterday. So I had sent out an email twice, and then I said, well, I sent another email out. But what I did was I put it up on a story on Instagram. And I think that's a reminder of the email. And then if they want more information about it, then they can go back and they can have a look at the email. So I think social media still has a very key role to play, but it might not be for the full extent of the information. It's really a reminder, or, you know, just to get them,
point them somewhere else.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be giving up on the digital media, social media, I mean,
No problem. Thanks, Orla. Is there any other questions or thoughts? There's lots of very positive feedback coming in there as well for you, Bethany, sorry, on the presentation. Lots of things for us to look and ponder over as we plan for the next academic year. Paula, sorry, I just see you have a question up there. Thanks, Paula.
Thanks very much, Angela, and thank you, Bethany. That was very interesting. I know you surveyed over 4 months. Have we any idea? I may have missed it. What was the, what kind of numbers did you have responding to the survey?
The numbers were 14,921, so close to 15K.
Okay, and did you have any sense, or did you have any data on whether it was more Dublin based or was it spread all around the country? Because I think you said you had 45 universities, but we don't have 45 universities, so it could have been 45 locations maybe.
Yeah, so those 45 universities would encompass online universities as well, so like Open University. So I don't know the direct split, but I think it is weighted by university. So what that means is each university that's listed within the research is proportionate to when we're looking at the national average. So it's not heavily concentrated in Dublin or any other region.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. It's just interesting.
Thanks, Paula. So before we maybe close it, is there any other comments or thoughts? We have a few more minutes there for lunch, but Thanks very much, Bethany, for presenting it. Is excellent. Olga, thanks very much for jumping in for me, opening it, and thank you to Caroline again for organising all the lunch and learns for us as well. So, enjoy the rest of the day, and we've another lunch and learn